The Seahawks completely retooled their linebacker group mid-season, and though it's only been one game with Tyrice Knight and Ernest Jones, so far Mike Macdonald and John Schneider are looking pretty smart. We're going to be breaking down how the duo starred in Sunday's win over the 49ers and what it means for Seattle's defense moving forward. Coming up here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on our latest Monday episode by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week, whether you're listening in from Port Townsend, Washington, or if you are over in Warsaw, Indiana. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you. The Seahawks getting back in the win column, and they snapped a couple of losing streaks. Their 2-game losing streak for this season and a 6-game losing streak to the 49ers. We're going to be breaking down the one position group that really stood out in that victory for the Seahawks at Levi Stadium. Plus, we've got our Monday mailbag, and we're going to dish out more key takeaways after revisiting the film coming out of yesterday's win in Santa Clara. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now for your lead story here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. It was a glorious Sunday afternoon in Santa Clara. The Seahawks finally getting, and I know Geno Smith may not have liked the verbiage here, but get the monkey off the back. That's exactly what happened for the Seahawks yesterday, a 20-17 victory over the San Francisco 49ers. There were a number of key players we talked about in yesterday's post-game show that stood out, but now, after having a chance to go back and rewatch the film, sometimes things are not as good as you thought they were, or they're better than you thought they were. Look, the linebacker play yesterday, and Mike Macdonald even says today, pretty darn good. That is exactly what it was. Ernest Jones and Tyrice Knight, the new duo. They weren't the starters 3 weeks ago, but they are now the starter for the Seattle Seahawks. And look, some fans are going to say this is hyperbole, but this is how I feel after watching that game yesterday. That was the best linebacker play, Rob, that I've seen from the Seattle Seahawks since KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner were together. It's been that long, and it's because these guys were flying downhill. They were making plays. They weren't getting consumed by blocks. They were either avoiding them or they were using their strength to shed, and their instincts. They were making it that the blockers couldn't get to them because how quickly they were dissecting plays. They were solid in coverage. You got some pass rushing contributions from both these guys. I thought it was as impressive of a linebacker game as we have seen really in 4 or 5 years since Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright were together.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that. And I don't think that it's hyperbole at all. I think that when you look at how the 49ers are based on, everything is built around their running game and in creating yardage after the catch, then, especially at the tight end and running back positions, then I think that the Seahawks linebackers were basically able to swallow all of that up effectively. Now, I would echo one of the things that Mike Macdonald said in his post-game press conference is that it's not so simple as just to give one group credit, but basically playing the defense is, of course, all about the entire team. And I think that the defensive linemen did a much better job of allowing Seattle's linebackers to flow freely to the football. One of the things that has always stood out to me about Ernest Jones is that he's not a very big linebacker, but he is able to slip off of blocks very, very well. As you said, the anticipation that he shows, his patience, his awareness of where the running back is going, not just where the blocker is, but where the running back is actually going to next. He anticipates it like a running back. He really sees the hole and gets there and does a great job. He has long arms. He is able to lasso ball carriers. He's a very physical hitter. Tyrice Knight showing off his awareness and his closing speed as well. I thought that it was a terrific performance by the Seahawks linebackers. I think that they deserve a lot of the credit that's coming their way, but I also think that there's a number of different spots on the defensive side of the ball that deserve a lot of credit for Seattle's victory over the 49ers.
Yeah, I think the defensive line did a better job yesterday of managing their gaps. And I think the less is more approach that Mike Macdonald's employing, where they've simplified things a little bit. I think it has helped that defensive line more than any position group, because you just got to let those guys go out there and just play and be physical. And I think there's been so much thinking going on at times that it has taken away from that aspect of the game. So I agree with you there. And run defense, you got to have all 11 guys on point. You can't have one. All it takes is one guy messing up his assignment. We've seen that a lot the last few years.
Yep.
It's all it takes is one guy not doing his job correctly. And it doesn't matter if the other 10 did it right. You can still give up big plays. And yesterday, all 11 guys were getting it done. But I'm just maintaining what I was saying here, though, that the linebacking group, that is the difference right now. That is the biggest difference from what we saw early in the season. And look, we talked about this a lot on the show, and it's not parting shots for the guys that are no longer on the roster, but Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson, one of the things that I thought both of these guys really struggled with, they were what I call block magnets. They both had major issues with getting hung up on blockers. And then once that happened, they couldn't get off of blocks. And it happened way too much. And I think especially with Dodson here as of late, I think that's why he was going to get benched and why the Seahawks opted to waive him, because I think Mike Macdonald reached the point where he's like, look, if you're not going to get off blocks, you're not going to get to the football quick enough that you can avoid these blocks. Like, what are we doing here? And so I think he felt like the rookie Tyrice Knight was going to immediately give them an upgrade in that regard. But I want to first talk about Ernest Jones. And I thought he played really good football yesterday coming out of the game. And then I turned on the all 22 and he was somehow better than what I thought he was yesterday. Rob, he had 13 tackles and 7 of them went for 3 or less yards. 6 of those went for 2 or less yards. We're talking 50% of his tackles were 2 or less yards. The guy was just all over the line of scrimmage making plays. And you mentioned his size. And this is maybe the thing that I'm not going to say surprises me, but it's not something that I viewed as a strength in Ernest Jones' game. But I am now coining the nickname. He is the Great Wall of Ernest. And what I mean by that is when a ball carrier hits him, he's going down. Like we were talking about this in the press box yesterday. There were several times where the 49ers had their running back, Christian McCaffrey, going full head of steam, and Ernest Jones right there, and it was just pop. He's down on the ground. There's no yards after contact. There's no pushing the pile. The running back is going down immediately when this guy hits it. So you're seeing the instincts. He almost looks like he's got eyeballs around his head. But really what it boils down to is Ernest Jones is one of those players that it feels like there's 2 of him on the field at all times. Just he's always by the football somehow. And it makes you wonder, like, did they clone him? Are there 2 of them out there? That's what he was playing like yesterday. And Tyrice Knight, you can see some of that same element to his game. There were a few plays he made yesterday. I'm like, how did he get to that football? And that's the pursuit angle. It's the speed. It's the instincts for a rookie. Just that knack for knowing where the football's at and being able to low fly over there and make a play. I mean, he had 11 tackles in this game too. He had a quarterback hit. Neither one of these guys missed a tackle in this game either. So you add in the fact that they were 100% efficient in their tackle attempts. They weren't getting hung up on blocks. They were contributing as rushers, and then they were solid in coverage for the most part. Look, it's night and day difference. I know Mike Macdonald doesn't want to pin it on one position group, and it's not fair to do that. But this run defense, one of the biggest problems, that second level, and seeing what this group did yesterday, that really gives you a lot of hope that this defense can maintain what they've done the last 2 games, and they can maintain that and sustain it into the second half here with these last 7 games, which would really improve this team's chances of maybe being able to get back to the playoffs.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, if Seattle's defense can maintain the level of play that we saw in Sunday's performance on the road at San Francisco, then this is your division title winner. And that I have no doubt about that in my mind, because that's one of the things is that I watched that game, Corbin, and I thought that the 49ers looked a little bit flat. And hey, give the Seahawks credit. They went into Santa Clara, a team that had bullied them, and they played fast, smart, physical football. They looked more desperate, angrier than I've seen the Seahawks play on all sides of the football, including special teams. And that's why they emerged as the victor. But I also think that you saw a San Francisco 49ers team that was clearly missing George Kittle. Christian McCaffrey does not look like the same guy, and the San Francisco 49ers offensive line, they didn't play very well.
Nope.
And so that's one of the things is that, to me, I saw Christian McCaffrey that, again, I don't see the same juice. I don't see the same power right now. The Arizona Cardinals, I know this sounds crazy to a lot of Seahawks fans, but considering the fact that the Cardinals are, of course, in first place right now, that they have one of the most physical running backs in all of the NFL in James Conner, I want to see Seattle's new duo at linebacker. Look, I am as excited about him as you are, but at the same time, I want to see this I want to see it in multiple games. I don't want to see the up and down inconsistency that we have seen so far from Seattle's linebackers, whether it be Tyrell Dodson, Jerome Baker, or obviously the two new linebackers now, Ernest Jones and Tyrice Knight. Prove it to me when you are playing against a team that is hitting on all cylinders like the Arizona Cardinals seem to be doing right now. Prove it to me against a physical back like James Conner. If they are as clean of tackling against James Conner and the Arizona Cardinals, then I'll feel a lot better that this is actually the much improved defense that it appeared to be. I mean, cutting the 49ers rushing game basically in half from what it was just a month ago was very impressive, but I want to see it maintain that level of consistency and dominance rather than just showing the flashes.
Yeah, the consistency is the big key here. The linebacker play has been a yo-yo this year. Can these two continue to – and here's the thing, was their first start together. They're going to have a chance to build more and more chemistry as they play. You would think that they're going to be better moving forward, but you have to prove it on the field, and Arizona's going to prevent a very different challenge. When we come back, we got tons of questions on social media that we're going to dig into on our Monday mailbag. Don't go away. You're listening to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or if you did, well, it's probably time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about our world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. This episode's also brought your way by our friends at Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is unlike any other app. It's just you against the numbers, and it's the only real money daily fantasy platform that offers an insurance policy for injuries so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets banged up. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. They also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You could double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDINNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's the code LOCKEDINNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thanks, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. It's time to open up our Monday mailbag. We got tons of questions on X and Blue Sky. Let's dive into them, Rob. Our first one here, and I think this is fitting, ending the conversation we just had about the linebackers here, from Wise Seahawks Fan 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. What is your confidence level in this sort of new look Seahawks defense that has played really well for the most part over the last 2 games?
I would say an 8 out of a 10, basically like a B grade. I think that it feels like it's starting to round into form right as the weather is changing, and that is the kind of football that I think that Mike McDonald wants to play. I not only have been very encouraged by what we've seen from the linebackers, but as I mentioned before, the defensive line and then the cornerbacks. Mike McDonald mentioned that in his Monday press conference that he thought that Seattle's corners, especially Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen, were absolutely spectacular. And I'm going to argue a little bit later that the safeties deserve some kudos as well. So I really do feel like this is a team that is starting to hit on some cylinders. I like the aggression that they showed. If you can't get home as a pass rushing team with only 4 guys, then damn it, send some other guys, because you have some types of players, Devin Witherspoon especially, and then the linebackers who are able to get to the quarterback.
Next question here coming from Michael Xavier. He tweets, it seems the run defense has looked a lot better these last couple weeks. Outside of the big acquisition of Ernest Jones, what have you seen differently from this group? So we just talked a lot about the linebacker play, the defensive line. I feel like maybe the other big difference that we've seen here, it seems like teams are not having the success running outside of the tackles that they were having. And the linebackers have some to do with that. There were several plays yesterday that Ernest Jones and Tyrice Knight were able to get outside and were able to make plays. But I saw Roy Robertson Harris a couple times set a really firm edge yesterday. Boy, Mafe was fantastic yesterday, by the way. That was one of the best games I've seen him play. I know he didn't have a sack, but a couple pass breakups, had a couple pressures. His run defense was excellent. And I feel like Kobe Bryant has had a lot to do with this too. How many times have we seen him come up the chute and make plays on the outside? He did it twice on that last decisive drive against the 49ers yesterday. So that is a big difference to me right now, is that the Seahawks are controlling the perimeter run game a lot better than what they were. And the linebackers are part of that, but you've seen Kobe Bryant step in and do that. We've seen some of the edge guys do a better job setting the edge. And that is really playing into the success they've had these last couple games. And I think it gives some credence to the idea there could be some sustainability there if everybody's able to continue executing their assignments at that high of a level. Alan Sales tweets, overall evaluation of Byron Murphy. I was high on the Rams picking him this year. This is a Rams fan that's sending us a question. I'm not seeing the production on paper, but for what I've seen visually, he's been good against the run. Rob, here we are. We're past the midway point in Byron Murphy II's rookie season. The numbers are not there, but where do you stand in terms of what we've seen from him to this point?
I think that he has been an underrated contributor to Seattle's improved run defense here over the last couple of weeks. You know, obviously he missed a couple of games due to injury, but since he has come back then, to take one of Mike McDonald's phrases, teams are feeling him in the middle. He was one of the, I thought, underrated star performers for the Seahawks in this game against the 49ers. You mentioned Roy Robertson Harris. He is another one who I thought played very, very well. Leonard Williams continues to give big Trent Williams all kinds of problems for the 49ers, but Byron Murphy II in the middle really gave San Francisco some headaches there. His ability to kind of push the pocket and allow those linebackers to create easy lanes for which to hit the running backs in the hole, I think that was a huge part of it. So look, I'm sure the Rams fans out there, and thank you for the question, I think you got to be feeling pretty darn good about the defensive linemen that you were drafted, especially from Florida State this past year. But at the same time, I think Seattle is going to be very excited about what they have with Byron Murphy. It feels like that his upside is absolutely through the roof.
D. Panky tweets, how confident are you that the Seahawks will have more of a run game identity down the stretch with continuity up front and Abe Lucas being back? How critical is it if they want to make the postseason? Well, to me, it is the most important thing other than the defense continuing to play consistent. The run game to me is the second most important thing that has to be there for the Seattle Seahawks to make it to the playoffs. And something that I did see yesterday, the run game was not great by any means, but it was more effective than we've seen. And mixing in screens really supplemented that run game. And it offered some of the same benefits by slowing down the pass rush. So I felt like Ryan Grubb was able to find some ways to change things up without necessarily unlocking this run game. But I do think Abe Lucas, there'll be more on this later, but he had 2 pancakes in this game. So, there were some plays you could tell he hadn't played for almost a year, but there were some plays like that is why Abe Lucas is a difference maker in the run game. And literally the first run that they had, he drove a lineman like 10 yards off the ball. It was awesome to see that. We haven't seen that at right tackle. So I do think that Abe Lucas, as he gets his legs back underneath him, he's already getting some physical plays in there. I think that is going to be a huge difference maker for this run game. If they can get that run game going, I think you're going to see the passing game take off. You're going to see the touchdown efficiency take off. To me, it is the domino that has to fall for everything else to fall into place. Taylor, on Blue Sky, the Hawks are playing poorly at home on defense. Any sign that a high burden of communication combined with the crowd noise that's intended to help is actually affecting them in a negative way in year one in this new scheme? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I don't feel that way. I think that it's, to be honest with you, just a little bit of kind of weird coincidences. I think that Seattle has come out flat and not played very well at home. There's no question about that. But I think that that part of it is that I think that the offensive line play has just been so bad at times. And I think that has allowed Ryan Grubb specifically as the offensive play caller to perhaps get a little more aggressive, thinking that, oh, we're at home. You're not going to have to deal with the crowd noise quite as much. Therefore, we can sprinkle in some deeper passes that have got Geno Smith sacked more often than he should, and perhaps playing more aggressively than he should, throwing some interceptions out there that, were poor decisions and things of that nature. That said, I do think, as we just talked about, that this is a Seahawks team that seems to be kind of rounding into form, as we're going to discuss here momentarily. The improvements along the offensive line, there's no question about it. Abe Lucas is an improvement, but Timmy was an improvement to center position as well. That, to me, is the most encouraging sign that I saw. Even with the linebackers, to me, I was just as encouraged about the offensive line play as any other spot on this team. And that's why I think that you're going to see Seattle start to play much better football, especially at home with the friendly crowd.
Last question here coming from Dogs Wear Purple on Blue Sky. Who are the top 3 non-quarterback extension candidates that you believe have to get done in the offseason based on their play so far? Well, listen, I think that Ernest Jones, you guys know how much I'm loving the way he's playing right now. Ernest Jones needs an extension yesterday. Like, get this guy a new contract, pay him top 5 linebacker money. To me, he's 24. He just turned 25. The guy is in the prime of his career. So that would easily be number 1 for me as far as extension candidates go. I think after that, it gets murky because a lot of the players that are heading towards free agency or have 1 year left, DK Metcalf obviously would be the other big name that if I'm in charge, I think DK Metcalf has to get another contract. I think you got to get him locked up. You see the value that he brings. But really away from those two, who's next in line? We talked about Charles Cross. Has he done enough to warrant that extension yet to this point? I think the jury's still somewhat out on that right now for Seattle's former top 10 pick. On the defensive side of the ball, Reek Woolen's another player after this year that could be extended. Are you going to extend him when you've got Devin Witherspoon 1 year later going to be eligible for his extension? So Seattle's got some decisions that they got to make in a number of these positions. I would think they would want to try to keep all those guys, but you do have a salary cap to get to deal with, and there's some big bloated contracts they're going to have to worry about on the other end of the spectrum to open up enough money to pay these guys. But to me, it's Ernest Jones, and then DK Metcalf would be the extension candidates that I think make the most sense right now for the Seattle Seahawks. When we come back, we are going to take a deep dive into yesterday's win over the 49ers, some Monday Musing takeaways that's coming up next here on Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL, and it's all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats. You can check out live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can bet on everything from Tyler Lockett scoring a touchdown against the Cardinals on Sunday, or Marvin Harrison Jr. being the first player with a 20-plus yard reception. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined here on a Victory Monday episode by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. Thanks as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. And make sure for your second listen to check out the new and improved Locked On NFL. It's now twice a day. Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans giving you some NFL espresso in the morning. And then Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jaguars dishing out all the insight analysis in the second episode. Again, that's Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Make it your second listen. The Seahawks improving to 5-5 and actually jump into third place in the NFC West with a 20-17 win over the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. Rob, we already dove into one of the key topics coming out of this game, the sensational linebacker play. But as you've already kind of hinted, I know that you have wanted to talk about this the entire show. Now we get to open up the floor here. Abraham Lucas and Olu Oluwatimi, maybe these two moves that happened in a chaotic week last week, maybe the Seahawks are going to end up having better players at both positions moving forward. I thought Olu Oluwatimi looked pretty darn good out there, aside from that one snap that he threw about 300 mile an hour back at Geno Smith. Otherwise, I thought he played a really good football game. And as I mentioned earlier, Abe Lucas, the IHOP is open again on the Seahawks offensive line, and he was eaten up in the run game.
No, he really was. Oluwatimi had a pancake as well. And I would honestly, I thought that Geno Smith needs to catch the ball. I mean, that would have hit him in the chin if his hand didn't deflect it. I mean, it definitely came back fast. But still, to me, if I was grading that, I would be grading that as a minus on the quarterback rather than on the center for that missed snap that you talked about there. But I would agree with what you just said there. I thought that Oluwatimi and Abe Lucas basically were, kind of like a surprise, but a positive surprise. I mean, especially considering the fact that, I think Seattle had to be stunned by the decision. I certainly was stunned by the decision, Connor Williams to abruptly retire mid-week, and so it kind of pushed Oluwatimi into a position that he hasn't been asked to do here for the Seahawks. And I think that his intelligence, his work ethic was definitely put on display. The fact that Seattle was already using him, he was practicing at guard. He had been playing some kind of move tight end for the Seahawks. So clearly they had been impressed with what they had been seeing on the practice field with him. So I'm not going to say that I was surprised that the former Remington Trophy Award winner as nation's best center was able to come in to this environment and be effective. I didn't think that he necessarily would be an upgrade, however, but I thought that he absolutely was that. To me, the most concerning play was the 4th and 1 where Seattle was unable to get any kind of push. There's no doubt Oluwatimi was pushed into the backfield on that particular snap. But other than that, I thought that he played pretty darn well in the run game. He played, I thought, spectacularly in pass protection. There was so much more communication along the offensive line than I saw with Connor Williams in the center position. That was a shocker to me. I remember evaluating Connor Williams back when he was at Texas and he played left tackle. And then, of course, he's played both center and guard. He was always a player whose best asset was his agility and his intelligence. He was never a power player. Oluwatimi can be a power player. If this is the running game that I think that Mike McDonald wants, that I think Ryan Grubb wants, then again, I think the Seattle got more physical at the point of attack with Oluwatimi in the center. And we know that Abe Lucas is a terrific football player. He had his own struggles, at least, a little bit. And this is first came back from the injury. But the fact that he was going up against Nick Bosa and basically kept Geno Smith clean for most of that game, again, I think that this was a huge development. I listened to you and Connor do a terrific job, as you guys always do, on the post-game show. And I love the fact that you mentioned Geno Smith and Devin Witherspoon as the MVPs, basically game balls on both sides of the field. To me, the conversation started with the offensive line, and again, with Oluwatimi and Abraham Lucas. And that is the biggest reason why I am encouraged by what the Seahawks showed against San Francisco. This does feel like a possible playoff running club.
Let's move away from the trenches for a second because, listen, at the end of the day, the skill guys, I know they always get more attention, but we got to talk Jackson Smith and Jigba. And sure. Listen, coming out of training camp, I mean, you were at some of the training camp practices. I was at all but maybe one or two of them. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, even back to OTAs, I don't know how many times on this show that I said, look, he's got a really good chance to lead this team in receptions and receiving yards. Well, don't look now. I know DK Metcalf's missed a couple of games with that knee injury, but it might not have mattered. Jackson Smith-Njigba right now is dominating the targets and catch numbers for the Seahawks. Over 100 receiving yards again yesterday, second straight game. The last two games, he has combined for 280 receiving yards, which is the third most ever in a two-game span in Seahawks history. Only Steve Largent, two different times, had more yards in two consecutive games. Jackson Smith-Njigba is finally turning into that star that I thought that he was going to be this year, and I anticipate that he is just now scratching the surface. And what he has done in clutch situations, this guy, he is the receiver equivalent of what Geno Smith has been at the quarterback spot with all those game-winning drives. Jackson Smith-Njigba is at the center of it every single time. He had 4 catches for 39 yards on that last touchdown drive. Almost half the yardage of their 80 yards was Jackson Smith-Njigba. A couple of those were key third down conversions. And then obviously the 2 touchdown catches he had to win games last year. He had the game-tying touchdown against the Rams in week 9. This kid just, it seems like when the stage gets brightest, I don't know if it's because he played at Ohio State and he was used to that, but when the stage gets brightest, Jackson Smith-Njigba plays his very best football. And I'm not going to mince words right now. I think he is Seattle's best receiver at this point, and I think he's only going to get better.
Yeah, definitely. He's playing as the best receiver right now. Seattle is absolutely targeting him. They're creating plays to get him in space. The rapport developing between he and Geno Smith is exciting. It's not just the numbers; it's the body language. I mean, JSN is walking around like he is the guy now. It was interesting. There were some of the plays on that game-winning drive, as you mentioned, that he would catch the ball, make some moves to try to maximize, obviously, his opportunity there with the ball in his hands, and then look back to Geno Smith and the offensive line and, urging his teammates to come down the field because this is go time. It's that sense of urgency rather than the deer in the headlights kind of a look that we've seen from some of Seattle's rookies, including JSN a year ago, and obviously this in his second season. So to me, it does feel like the mantle is getting passed a little bit right now. That DK Metcalf is still unquestionably the most physically gifted receiver in Seattle Seahawks history. But at the same time, in terms of all-around play, JSN has made huge strides over the last couple of weeks.
Let's swing over to the defensive side of the football. And I want to talk about a position group here rather than just one particular player. And you already mentioned Devin Witherspoon and Rick Woolen, and both those guys played really well yesterday. Woolen gave up a couple of first downs in coverage, but he had pretty sticky coverage most of the day. Devin Witherspoon had 3 pass breakups. He had 3 the entire season going into this game. One of those led to the interception by big Jonathan Hankins. I thought Witherspoon easily played his best game of the season. And Josh Jobe, I can just keep sitting here and just raving about this kid. You want to know, Rob, who has the lowest passer rating against of any corner with over 100 coverage reps in the NFL right now? It is Josh Jobe. And yesterday he gave up 2 catches. That's it. And they were both short completions. I mean, the guy, you watch the film, Brock Purdy couldn't throw his direction most of the game because the receiver wasn't open. He wasn't giving up separation. You saw some physical press coverage from him. Came up and made a couple tackles. He had 1 bad missed tackle, but he still was coming up willingly making plays. And Mike McDonald was gushing about him today. He just keeps stacking day after day. And Mike McDonald and staff are rewarding guys that are doing it. That's why he's still in the starting lineup. But you can't take a guy that's got the lowest passer rating against in the NFL out of the starting lineup. That continuity they've now got at that quarterback spot with those 3 players, that to me might be the most exciting thing in terms of looking at the upside of this group these last 7 games. Because I know Brandon Ayuk wasn't in there. I know George Kittle wasn't, but you still got Pearsall. You've still got Jawan Jennings. You still got Deebo Samuel. The 49ers still had weapons on the outside. Seattle gave up 1 catch of more than 14 yards yesterday. And it's not like their pass rush was swarming Brock Purdy, but the secondary was so sticky. The receivers just couldn't create separation. And so that is a testament to the way those corners are playing right now.
Yeah, when we started today's show, Corbin, I was really excited to kind of talk about Seattle safeties, and I do think that they deserve some credit. The range that they showed in the back half, I think, allowed Seattle's corners to play even more aggressively, and I do think that Seattle's pass rush was strategic. They didn't create a whole bunch of numbers, of course, but at the same time, there was some pressure on Brock Purdy. But I think that the easiest way of just describing that is that Seattle's corners played brilliant football. I mean, their best all-around game, in my opinion. What was this performance? And so again, I think the Seattle safeties had something to do with that. It's a good quality team defense, but at the same time, I think that if you were going to shine the spotlight on somebody on the defensive side of the ball, the fact that, as you said, the 49ers only had one reception of over 14 yards, that they consistently would have to throw the ball to the receiver, and their inability to create any kind of yardage after the catch. And we saw it on basically the final play, or at least the one that resulted in San Francisco punting the ball back to Seattle and Geno Smith leading the team to that victory. I mean, Kobe Bryant was, he made the initial hit on Juwan Jennings. Jennings was able to kind of push him off, and it looked like he was going to be able to possibly scramble for more yards. The way that Seattle swarmed to the football, Kobe Bryant, of course, leading that charge again, that to me was one of the most exciting things I saw, and a huge change from what we had seen Seattle struggle a little bit with, especially the 49ers, but other teams as well, being able to create yardage after the catch. Kudos to the Seattle secondary.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, it's Tell the Truth Tuesday. We'll have some more wisdom coming out of Sunday's win and looking towards the rest of the season. And we're going to take a first look at the first place Arizona Cardinals heading into a crucial home game for Week 12. Make sure that you're listening in. Enjoy the rest of your Monday night. Go Hawks.